The playoffs has just started and Spike Brothers already cheated themselves to the finals. Let's take a look at their latest tricks, tips, and cheats.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another set review of The Raging Tactics, and today we're gonna take an in-depth look at the latest Spike Brothers support and see what their nasty cheats and tricks they're up to this time. And in this set, they got something special as they are introducing a complete new mechanic to Vanguard where they are able to switch their force markers from one position to another position. So without further ado, you're probably already excited to see what these new cards can do and how this mechanic interacts with other cards. So let's jump right into these new cards and see for yourself how well these cards can perform in the current set as well as the established previous support. So we're gonna start off this set review with, of course, the obvious reprints, and we've got two triggers as well as the old starter reprinted in this set. And because they are just generic reprints and they don't really have extra beneficial effort or value, I only gonna give them 1 star. So, now we're on to the new vanillas and generic cards that we have, and we start off with their third critical trigger, and that is for them Killparade Mevis. And just like all the other extra triggers, I'm gonna give this one 3 stars as it opens up more deck designing, at least in the trigger department, where they can now at least play with more than 8 critical triggers. Then in the same vein, we also got a grade 1 vanilla card, and for them that is the 9k grade 1 variant. Sadly, this doesn't really help the clan at all, as they are already capable of making magic numbers with their generic 8k grade 1s that at least have some beneficial effect, and they also really don't benefit from the extra power onto their Vanguard body. So without any of much to do, I only can give this card a 1 star, as it really won't be played at all. Then the following vanilla card that we got is the 10k grade 2 Intrigue Center, and this one is also 1 star because we already have a 10k vanilla, so this is just a reprint but just with a different name and a different artwork. Then to round up the entire package, we've got the grade 1 drop draw PG, and for them that is Sweetie Guard, and just like all the other grade 1 PGs, I'm gonna give this one 3 stars as it opens up more deck building options and design, because now we can remove the draw PGs and add the extra criticals that we have in this set to add up to more offensive capabilities if we want so. Then we head straight into the generic support that this set has to offer for Spike Brothers, and we start off with this grade 1 Big Blow Ted, and we are very familiar with its skill as it looks a little bit like other cards that we had in the previous set, as its skills, although in regular circle, when placed, cost put a grade 2 or greater card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. This is great to refill your deck with excellent hit targets for something like Cyfreeze, or maybe even in combination with Maximum or High Speed Brucky, as all of these cards are grade 2s and above. So you can refill those cards and have more fuel, or at least more targets for the following turns when you want to use their skills. And also the extra benefit of the 10k is pretty nice. The only downside is that it's limited to grade 3s and grade 2s, so you cannot really use much more than that. You can put triggers back or other specific cards, and you can also not put grade 1s back. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card, as putting cards back in the deck is always great, and the fact that you get some added power can also be beneficial for the current turn, as putting cards back is something for a late game investment, but now you also get a current payout with the extra power onto the field, and it doesn't cost you any resources, so that's also pretty nice. Then immediately we go into a big hitting unit, as we have this grade 1 offensive Punter, and this one is pretty nuts in my opinion, as it's got 2 very solid skills. His first one is Auto Regular Circle. When it boosts, costs Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 2k until the end of the battle. At the end of the battle, draw a card and put this card on the bottom of your deck. Alright, so you can have this thing become a 10k booster. That's pretty decent. Why? Because now you can have some good early aggression when you go into your grade 2 turn, because this as a 10k booster means you can build an 18k column with another grade 1, or you can build a 20k column with another grade 2. So if your opponent hits a defensive trigger during one of your attacks, Thanks to this grade 1, you can still beat over that defensive trigger and still force guard from their hand, or at least give them 1 extra damage. That is very significant in something like Spike Brothers, where your early game is very important to establish your pace or your game plan for the following turns when you go into your grade 3 turns. And also the fact that you can put it back to deck and you draw something helps you a lot, as you now can put this thing back for a potential future target, or you can cycle a bit through your deck to hit your key pieces, maybe your main grade 3 right target or a grade 2 target that you need for the next turn, so you can at least refill your hand at the same time. But that's not all as this card has to offer, as we have a second ability, and that's Auto. When rode upon, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So it's basically a old variant of the Forerunner skill, but now on a grade 1. That's pretty significant, because now as we ride it on the grade 1 turn, we can immediately get it as a booster or an attacker the following turn. So either we can spread out the front row to have 3 attacks or 2 attacks, or we can put it in the back row and have an excellent booster and force more cards from opponents' hands, as defensive triggers will not save them for that specific turn. So a lot of options, and it allows you to mitigate the losses that you would get by riding cards from hand. This way you can get all the cards onto the field and maximize your offensive capabilities. So for that, I think it's a solid 5-star card, as this thing would most likely be run at a 4-off in most Spike Brothers players' decks, as this thing can amp up the speed of the game very significantly, and that's only by using 1 single card. Not many cards can say that. Then next we have another super strong generic power card, and this time it's a grade 2 Powerback Renaldo. And this card, well, its skill explains everything for it, as it scales Auto and Vanguard the rearguard circle when placed from hand, cost, counterblast 1, and put a card from your hand into the soul. Look up the same number of cards from the top of your deck as your Vanguard's grade, call up the 3 cards from among them to the rearguard circle, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. This thing, for 1 counterblast and 1 card in hand, can build you almost an entire field. The moment that you can call this thing, or ride it, you can already build 2 attacks or at least 1 significant column. And if you ride this thing from offensive Punter, you can also put offensive Punter onto the back row, and just like that, you build an entire board on turn 2 and you're ready to hit your opponent's face in. And that's only from grade 2. If you call this thing on grade 3, you can call all 3 cards onto the field. And that is pretty nuts, as whenever you're up against something that can clear your board, just by having 1 Powerback Renaldo in your hand, you can immediately mitigate the losses by resolving its skill. And it also has some premium application, as it counts your Vanguard's grade. So if you straighten that turn, you're at grade 4. Then resolving the skill, you can check the top 4 cards and call 3 out among them. So you have a little bit more choices to make when you're resolving the skill. So it scales well with premium in mind, and it is an excellent early game aggression tool for standard to use for their offensive plays when they go into the grade 3s, like General Siegfried or the new Deadheat Bullspike. So for that, I think it's a solid 5-star card that will help and benefit for a lot of Spike Brother players out there. Now we go into a duo of cards that is very interesting, as it looks very wonky just on paper, but when you take in mind that we have something like General Siegfried, you can see the use of these cards. So I like to call these 2 cards General Siegfried support cards. So the first one I want to talk about is this grade 2 Detonate Bahrel, and it skills Auto and rearguard circle when it attacks, costs Soul Blast 1 Detonate Bahrel, draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of the battle. So basically this is on attack, Persona Blast it from the soul, and it gains 10k power and you draw a card. So it is a 20k attacker that can allow you to draw a card. That's pretty nice, but the only downside is to the card is you need to get this thing into your soul. There are some ways to get this within this support set and just by riding it on grade 2, but that's a very small window of opportunity to get that off, and if you don't, this thing is useless, and even if you did get it off, you can only resolve it once and that's about it. But when we take a look at General Siegfried, that can use its skill to basically put a copy into the soul and search out another one and give it 10k, if you combine those 2 skills, then you can give this unit another 10k, turning it into a 30k attack that allows you to draw a card, and then it's pretty nice. It works, it interacts well with General Seyfried, and you get some extra beneficial bonus effect out of it than just putting cards into the soul that we had with the previous support cards. But overall, it's not really that useful in other situations, so for that I think it's only good for 2 stars, as it probably won't be run, but for people that want to play General Seyfried but with a limited budget, these are some nice additions for the card. This will also refer to the next card that we're going to talk about, that is this Grade 3, and it is Breaking Granmobile. And Granmobile's skill is auto Vanguard Circle. When your Vanguard attacks, cause Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1 Breaking Granmobile and stand this unit. So instead of getting an extra draw and 10k power like the Grade 2, this one allows you to resend your units. That is a pretty nice addition, as it allows for multi-attacking in force, so that could be very deadly. Especially if it combined with General Seyfried that can use its skill to give it an additional 10k power, so you restand a 23k unit without accounting for the force markers as well as potential triggers. But this card has the same downside as the Grade 2, that it's very limited in use and it's not really that powerful. Also a bad factor about this card is it doesn't have the force marker symbol, so if we use it in combination with General Seyfried, we can only write Seyfried and not this unit, as we have a big problem if this is our Vanguard. So when everything added together, I think it's a solid 2-star card, as it won't be run in many people's builds, but it's a nice budget alternative for a General Seyfried centered build. Next up, we've got another duo of cards, and these 2 cards are some pretty weird finisher cards, but they have some potential. So let's take a look at these new cards, and we'll start off with this Grade 2 Flareblast Coyote, and its skill is auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, costs Soul Blast 9. Until end of the battle, this unit gets power plus 30k, and your opponent cannot call sentinels from his or her hand. At the end of the battle, put all of your rearguards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So basically, by sacrificing your entire board at the end of the turn, you can have a massive beater which cannot be sentinel. That is a big thing, because massive beaters aren't really that much worth if your opponent can just perfect guard them. So by sentinel restricting them, the power has some extra added value. That, combined with other means within Spike Brothers to add more power to the unit with something like General Seyfried, the force markers, or other capabilities, this could be a very strong beater. And the 8k body might make it awkward, but by just adding increments of 5k power to the unit, it will still be a magic number against any type of deck. So the power number on the card makes sense. The only big issue that I have with this card is it's Soul Blast 9, so it's very late game, and the fact that you need to sacrifice your entire board. And that's really awkward, as currently we cannot abuse that requirement, as not a lot of other cards send themselves back to the deck or are way too expensive to fulfill with this card. But we can do that with cards like Offensive Punter, and even with the new Bad End Dragger that can send cards to the bottom of the deck. So there are ways to mitigate the cost or the negative effect of it, but the Soul Blast 9 is still a big hurdle to jump over, and not a lot of decks can generate that amount of resources, especially the new build, which uses a lot of soul. This could work with General Seyfried, but then again, is that deck gonna survive long enough to really utilize this attack, because it's only 1 damage, and if your opponent isn't sitting at 5 or this thing doesn't have an extra crit, it could all mean nothing, as just a high beat stick that will generate 1 damage, and then it's your opponent's turn, and what do you have left to do against your opponent? So for that, I think it's a 2-star card for now. Maybe when we get more cards, or there is some nice interaction between certain cards that can really highlight this card a lot, then this card could shine, but for now, it's probably one of those wacky cards that not a lot of people will use at all. Then the second finisher that we're going to talk about is this Grade 3 Gunwild Wolf, and its skills auto and Vanguard to Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, costs Soul Blast 3 Grade 3s, and put any number of your rearguards on the bottom of your deck in any order. And until the end of the battle, where your opponent would call cards from his or her hand to the Guardian Circle, he or she must call the same number of cards or more as the number of cards you put into your deck for the cost of this at the same time. So once again, we have a build your own Battle Door skill, only this has a lot more restrictions to it. You need to Soul Blast 3 Grade 3s, and you need to put your field on the bottom of your deck. So where the Coyote has to put them at the end of the turn at the bottom of the deck, so if you could already put them with other skills to get get more benefit out of them. This one cannot have that same interactions. You need to put them bottom deck if you want to use it. So basically, if it's your Vanguard or your rearguard, it's gonna be the last attack of the turn to get most value out of your cards, as you don't want to put standing units that can still attack on the bottom of your deck. So meaning it can still be subjugated to a perfect guard. However, if we can put 4 cards on the bottom of the deck as a rearguard unit, then maybe they don't have enough cards left in hand to pay for the cost of the perfect guard as well. But then we might have the power issue, but for some builds with force markers and other skills, we can give this unit enough power that even that amount of guard won't be necessary. But probably in most scenarios, you're going to use a skill where they don't have that many cards in hand, and it just must take the attack. But with that, we still have the Soul Blast 3 Great Freeze, and in most builds cannot amount to that number. It's really hard to take that number and be able to pay it. Especially in fact that this is a grade 3 means you're probably gonna run 3 or 4 copies of this card, so you don't have a lot of room left for other grade 3s that can maybe help you sustain this cost. The only card that can work well with this in combination is General Seyfried himself. But with that said, we have some other cards that can help us put more grade 3s into the souls, like cards that put cards from hand in the soul for cost, like Powerback Renaldo, for example. And we even have Gyro Slinger from the previous support that can potentially help this card with more consistency if we put it into a deck where we run multiple grade 3s than just 2 different grade 3s in most builds. If we run 12 grade 3s, then maybe we can use this skill more effectively. But for now, with all the restrictions to it and not that much payout, I think it's worth for only 2 stars, as not a lot of people are probably going to play this card, as the other grade 3s, at least the VRs, are way more beneficial for your deck than just this grade 3 at all. One such a grade 3 is of course the new Bat and Dragger, and that's because of his following 2 skills. His first one is Auto Vanguard to Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter +1 and put a rearguard on the bottom of your deck, and this unit gets power +5k and critical +1 until the end of battle. This is pretty solid because now we can have a crit pressure on any type of attack whenever we want, either a Vanguard or one of our rearguards, and the extra 5k power means that it won't be easy to guard against the attack, as it will be a solid 18k attacker on its own. And that combined with maybe something like Offensive Punter that can become a 10k booster, you can have a 28k attack on your hands with a crit. That's a pretty good number, especially on your first grade 3 turn, where maybe your opponent doesn't really have that much guard value or that many guard options available to them, so they might be forced to take the 2 damage. Also, by putting cards on the bottom of your deck, you are able to refill certain cards with their skills like High Speed Brucky or Maximum, but this can also work well with Flareblast Coyote that we just discussed about for his condition where we need to put everything at the bottom of the deck at the end of the turn anyways, so we can have some extra value out of our cards while doing so. But it doesn't end here, as we also have the second ability, and that's Auto. When rode upon, call this card to the rearguard circle and retire all of your opponent's rearguards in the column it was called to. So just like the grade 1 offensive punter, this one can be called right back from the soul to the rearguard circle, and by doing so, you not only get a +1 onto the field, so an extra attacker, and it's a solid attacker with the potential 5k crit, but we can also snipe 2 rearguards from our opponent's field, so that's a major trade-off. We now have solid control options within Spike Brothers, and that is pretty scary. And for all that together, I think it's a solid 4-star cards. It's not a 5-star major because the unwrite skill is pretty good, but just like we've seen with other unwrite skills like the Sonic Stinger Dragon in Narukami, they are usually a tad too slow. They can be used as a right target, but most certainly they are more favorable to just instead call them to the rearguard circle. But that rearguard circle skill is definitely a 4-star card worth, as it does a lot of work for the clan. Now with that said, we dive into the main bulk of the support wave, the cards that work with the new mechanic of passing force markers between units. And we start off with some easy cards to digest, and that's this grade 1 Elevation Wideout. As its skill is continuous rearguard circle. If it's on a rearguard circle with a force marker, this unit gets power +10k. So basically it's a 28k unit, and it continues during either player's turn, so it's a passive 18k unit on your opponent's turn as well. So it's a pretty solid grade 1 that can stick around on the board a little bit longer than usual, and it's a pretty solid attacker if I say so myself. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card. Yes, the skill is simple, but then again, a 28k Peter is nothing to sneeze at. And just like the grade 1, we also have a grade 2 that is Provoke Needle, with the exact same skill as it continues on rearguard circle. If it's on a rearguard circle with a force marker, this unit gets power plus 10k. So it becomes a 20k unit, but with the force marker power during your turn, it's a 30k unit. That's again a pretty solid beater, as with an 8k unit behind it, like the grade 1 we just talked about, it's a 38k lane. And I think this is also a solid 3-star card, as it has somewhat the same value as High Speed Brocky, as they both get an additional 10k power on their own with their skill. And if they're both on a force marker, they both are going to be 30k. Only High Speed Brocky has a different application than this card, but this card in combination with the new mechanic is a pretty solid beater on its own regards. Then next we have a grade 1 that can give us some more resources, as that is Jackknife Janice, and this grade 1 has the skill Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle it boosts a rearguard, and that unit circle has a force marker, cost counter plus 1, put the rearguard into your soul and draw a card. So this allows us to filter through a deck, also be able to fill our soul, and even remove cards from the field. So it interacts once again with Coyote that puts everything at the bottom of the deck at the end of the turn. So this will help you clean up your field even more. But another important thing is that this puts the unit it boosted into the soul if it has a force marker. So we can even work it with other cards like the 2 Cypher support cards that we talked early in the video, because they want to soul blast themselves. So if this card boosted one of those copies, we put them into the soul, and if we have one other standing at the other column, we can then resolve their skill at the same time, because now we can soul blast their own specific card. But another thing is, it works also with the other finisher grade 3 that needs to soul blast 3 different grade 3s, as this card can really amp up the number of grade 3s in your soul, as you can just boost grade 3s with it and then push them into the souls, as you can then use it for fuel for the resources of that skill. So as you can see, this card allows for a lot of playabilities and a lot of options for different deck building and different deck strategies. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card. It's not a 4-star card, even though it has so many applications, and the reason for that is it costs a counterblast, and that means it's very limited in uses, as Counterblast is a very scarce resources for Spike Brothers. Another such card that shows a lot of potential but is limited through the same means is the following grade 1, Snapper Devil. And this is also the first cards that showcase how this new mechanic works, as its skills are Auto and Vanguard Circle, when its attack hits, draw a card. This is a very similar skill that we've seen on a bunch of other grade 1s that have the same skill, and it's basically to benefit from the fact that if you go second, you can push them back with this type of skill to even out the playing field. If you potentially hit them or not, you at least get the hit pressure on them. But the magic lies in the second ability, as says Auto Rearguard Circle. When it boosts, cost counter plus 1 and move all of your force markers to the boosted unit circle. So when this unit is boosting a unit, if we pay its cost counter plus 1, all the force markers that are spread out around the field, wherever you put them, are then suddenly moved to that unit which it's boosting. So if you have 2 force markers, they both are now under that unit, and that unit is going to get a plus 20k boost. That's pretty nice, as it means as if you already use the units that where the force marker was underneath, so you get another effect out of those force markers. So instead they give you 10k power for the turn, they actually give you 20k power that turn. You can now get a second load out of that power gain. So overall, that in itself is a pretty solid skill. However, we have other cards that can do the exact same thing, but a little bit more efficiently. So that's why I'm only going to give this one 3 stars, as just like the previous grade 1, the fact that it's relying on Counterblast means it's limited to a certain degree in Spike Brothers. But it's still a very nice addition to the deck nonetheless, as because we now have a card that uses Counterblast and we have some cards that use Soul Blast, that gives us more options. If one of the 2 resources is running low, we can mitigate our resources a little bit by relying on the other one for another turn. Then the second card of this new mechanic is this grade 2 Derange Thaddeus, and its skills are Auto Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter plus 1 and move all of your force markers to this unit circle. So where the grade 1 is moving them to the circle of the unit it's boosting, this unit moves them to itself. So once again, it relies on Counterblast, meaning it's a little bit limited and even less practical than the grade 1, as it only moves to itself and not to the boosting unit, so you cannot use this for every type of card and in any type of combination. It can only be used for itself. But we also have a second ability, and that's Auto Rearguard Circle. When an attack hits, and if this unit circle has a force marker, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So on hit, with the force marker, you get a free retire out of it. That's pretty okay. It gives you more options, it gives you some crowd control, and it gives you more benefit from moving the force markers to the unit for more than just a power gain. Also, a fun thing about this card ability is that it needs to hit any type of unit. So if you attack into one of their rear guards, you retire one on the attack, but then because it hits, you can retire another one of their rear guards. So you can use this card for efficient field wipe or field destruction or field disruption if you don't want to give them any more damage, or you cannot hit their Vanguard effectively anymore. So you have more options to discard. And for that design, I'm going to give this one 4 stars, as it opens up more playabilities. It gives you more options to move force markers, because if you don't have the grade 1 and you have this card, it allows you to use Counterblast to move the circles, move the force markers as well. So you're not relying on 1 or 2 cards only. You have more cards and more effects available to you to move those markers around the field. And you want to move those markers as much as possible. And this card allows you to do that a bit more effectively and more consistently. Then it's time to talk about the last card of this set and the namesake of this new support, and also the major player of the naming of this set, and that's none other than Deadheat Bullspike. And this new VR for Spike Brothers, this grade 3, has 2 new strong interesting skills, as its first one is Auto Vanguard Circle. When your unit attacks, cast Soul Blast 1 and move all of your force markers to that unit circle. So where the grade 2 and the grade 1 uses Counterblast and could only move circles to either themselves on attack or on the unit they are boosting for the attack, this unit can move them whenever a unit attacks and move them to them for a Soul Blast. So this ability is 10 times better than the grade 1 and the grade 2 by miles ahead. But because of that fact, you're gonna use it a lot, you're gonna run out of soul quite fast and very scarce, and because of that you're going to use the skill a lot, so you're going to be running out of soul very early on and very fast. So you need that grade 1 and the grade 2 to at least have some more options available to you to move those markers around. But this on its own is already a pretty strong skill. Then we have a second ability, and that makes everything even more annoying for your opponent, as it's Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. When the attack of your unit on a circle with a force marker does not hit, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So this means that if they are going to guard one of your attacks, and probably every attack is going to have a force marker underneath it thanks to its skill, they are forced to go -2 on card economy, because you're going to draw a card and they're going to lose a rear guard. And it doesn't cost you any resources at all for doing that. So that means if your opponent doesn't want to give you that card and doesn't want to lose a rear guard, they are forced to take free attacks. If you're going to attack with free attacks, but you probably are going to do that because you're Spike Brothers, so they are forced to take free damage. Then when they are at 4 or 5 damage, they are going to lose a rear guard each and every single turn, and you're going to gain a card each and every single turn. That's a major trade-off. But what's more annoying is if you combine this with Thaddeus, the grade 2 we just talked about, you can basically remove this whole option from them, and you're always going to retire a card from them. As if you have Thaddeus on the field and you put a force marker underneath it, it doesn't matter if the attack hits or doesn't hit, you're going to at least retire a rear guard out of them. If it doesn't hit, you're also going to get draw out of it, because Thaddeus has an unhit skill and Bullspike has a not unhit skill. That's really annoying for your opponent to deal with. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. This thing can be used in all type of combination of cards. You can use it with the grade 1 and the grade 2 that gain an extra passive 10k to have some massive numbers on the field. And this can work with Force 1 as well as Force 2, because with Force 1, you can give some massive power boost to your units, especially if you're already ridden twice, as every unit is going to get an extra 20k power as you move both force markers to all your front row units every time you're going to attack. But if you ride on to grade 3 and your opponent is already sitting at 4 damage, you can even use Force 2 and give every single attack an extra crit, meaning they can never take an attack or they die. So because of all the utility options for this card and the fact that this card has so much value and raw power built into it, I think it's a solid 5-star card and a definite VR worth card for Spike Brothers, and I think a lot of Spike Brother players are very happy with the new additions to their clan. So we've seen a lot of interesting things for Spike Brothers. We have seen this new mechanic where we're able to switch force markers from one unit to another unit. We also saw cards that Soul Blast themselves to get more beneficial effects out of them, so you could say pseudo General Siegfried support. We also saw some very awkward or wacky finishers that might be useful in some scenarios, maybe later down the line with future support, or they could be very useful in premium where they have a lot more tools available to them, and there could be a golden combination that we haven't seen of, or at least came up with as of yet. And to round off everything up, we got some solid new general additions like Offensive Punter and Powerback Renaldo that can help any type of Spike Brother deck. So yeah, Spike Brother players, I think your new format, your new lineup is going to be looking solid for the next kickoff because Spike Brothers is looking juicy right now. But that's about everything for this set review. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the new card for Spike Brothers, or should I say new card for Spike Brothers. I'm very curious what your take on the new cards are. Are you excited about this new mechanic? Do you want to see more support for them later down the line with this specific mechanic? Or do you want to see something different? Or maybe see this mechanic incorporate to other clans as well? Or maybe other gift markers where we can do something else interesting with markers? Because we haven't really seen this type of interaction with markers besides of the witches that can basically turn units into protect markers. So let me know your thoughts and opinions about this matter. As always, I want to thank my supporters over at Patreon for making this video possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel, then head over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one.